A silence colder than winter has settled between two souls once bound by fire. She has shed her last tear for the man who shattered her heart, and now her calm, unbreakable composure becomes the storm he cannot escape. Whispers spread through glittering halls as a powerful magnate finds himself unraveling, desperate to reclaim what he once took for granted. But beneath her serenity lies a choice that could destroy reputations, expose long-buried secrets, and alter the course of their lives forever. Before we begin, tell me, from where in the world are you listening today? And what do you love most about period romances filled with passion, betrayal, and impossible decisions? In the shadowed opulence of a Fifth Avenue mansion, where gas lamps flickered like hesitant stars against the velvet night, Olivia Harrington stood before a towering mirror. Her reflection stared back, pale and unyielding, framed by the high collar of her midnight blue silk gown. The fabric clung to her slender form, its corseted bodice a cage of whalebone and restraint, whispering of the era's unyielding expectations. At 24, she was the epitome of Gilded Age grace, ebony curls pinned with pearl combs, emerald eyes sharp as cut glass. Yet tonight, those eyes held no tears, no quiver of lip, only a chill that could frost the very air. She had cried for him once, endless nights, her sobs echoing through the marble halls of her family's estate, mourning the man who had promised her the world and delivered only ashes. Alexander Voss, the iron-fisted magnate whose railroads snaked across the continent like veins of steel, had been her everything. His touch had ignited her soul, his whispers, a symphony of forever. But betrayal came swift as a winter gale, whispers of his dalliances with opera singers and society widows, sealed by a letter she found crumpled in his study, cold proof that her love was but a footnote in his empire-building saga. Now, as the grandfather clock struck 11, Olivia smoothed her skirts with deliberate calm. The annual Vanderbilt ball awaited below, a glittering vortex of New York's elite, tycoons in tailcoats, heiresses in Worth gowns, all swirling under crystal chandeliers that dripped light like molten gold. She descended the grand staircase, her footsteps measured, each one a declaration of war. No more the wilting flower. She was steel now, forged in the fire of his indifference. The ballroom doors swung open, and the murmur of the crowd hushed for a heartbeat. Heads turned, Mrs. Astor with her lorgnette raised, the young Rockefellers exchanging glances. Olivia glided in, her chin high, a fan of ivory lace fluttering in her gloved hand, like a white flag of truce she had no intention of honoring. Conversations rippled in her wake. The Harrington girl, so composed after that scandal. Voss must be turning in his, well, wherever he is tonight. And there he was, across the sea of silk and satin, Alexander Voss, towering and broad-shouldered, his dark hair slicked back, his evening suit cut sharp as a blade. At 32, he commanded the room without effort, his fortune built on coal mines and steel mills, his name synonymous with power. But tonight, his steel-grey eyes locked on her, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered there. He had expected tears, pleas, the broken girl he left behind 6 months ago when he vanished to Chicago on business, only to return with rumors of a secret engagement trailing him like smoke. He approached, parting the crowd like Moses the sea. "Olivia," he said, his voice low, edged with that familiar rumble that once made her heart race. Up close, she saw the lines etched deeper around his mouth, the shadow of stubble betraying sleepless nights. "You've changed." She met his gaze, unflinching. No blush, no tremble, just a cool tilt of her head. "Have I, Mr. Voss? Or have you simply forgotten what composure looks like?" Her words sliced clean, drawing a murmur from nearby ears. Caroline Schermerhorn, eavesdropping behind her fan, gasped softly. Alexander's jaw tightened. He reached for her arm, but she stepped back, fluid as a dancer. "We need to talk, privately." "Talk?" Olivia's laugh was soft, mirthless, like wind through barren branches. "You had your chance for words, Alexander." Months of silence were eloquent enough. She turned, her gown whispering against the polished floor, but not before she saw it. The crack in his armor. Desperation. Raw and unfamiliar, flashing in those eyes that had once conquered boardrooms, and her heart. As she melted into the throng, accepting a waltz from a bland but polite banker, Alexander watched, his fists clenched at his sides. She no longer cried for him. That coldness. It clawed at him, deeper than any rival's scheme. What had he unleashed? And how could he reclaim what he never truly lost? The orchestra swelled, violins weeping in minor keys, but Olivia danced on, her steps light, her heart a fortress. Little did she know the magnate's madness had only just begun, a storm brewing in the gilded heart of the city, threatening to shatter them both. If this tale of frozen hearts and rekindled fires grips you already, hit that like button to show your support. And subscribe to the channel for more stories from the Gilded Age that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment below. From which city and country are you watching tonight? Your words fuel the next chapter. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of the Harrington mansion, casting delicate shadows on the rosewood furniture that filled Olivia's boudoir. She sat at her vanity, the air heavy with the scent of lavender soap and fresh linens. At 24, her days unfolded in the rigid rhythm of New York's upper echelons, a world of calling cards, afternoon teas, and unspoken alliances that bound fortunes like iron chains. Her father, Elias Harrington, had built his wealth in textiles, importing silks from the Orient that draped the elite in shimmering finery. But since Mother's passing 5 years prior, the household leaned on Olivia's poise to maintain its luster. She brushed her ebony curls, pinning them into a simple chignon with tortoiseshell combs. Her morning gown of soft muslin, high-necked and adorned with subtle lace at the cuffs, spoke of quiet elegance. No bold colors today. Restraint was her armor. Downstairs, the butler, Mr. Jenkins, a stoic figure with a neatly trimmed beard, served breakfast in the sunlit dining room. Silver clinked against porcelain as Olivia sipped her coffee, black and strong, while scanning the society pages of the New York Times. Headlines touted railroad expansions and Vanderbilt's latest extravagance, but her eyes lingered on a discreet notice. Mr. Alexander Voss returns from Chicago amid whispers of new ventures. Elias entered, his portly frame squeezed into a vested suit, his mustache twitching with habitual concern. At 58, he carried the weight of expectations, the need to secure alliances through marriage, to elevate the Harrington name beyond mere merchants. "Good morning." "My dear," he said, settling into his chair with a creak. "You were the talk of the ball last night. Mrs. Astor herself inquired after you." Olivia folded the paper neatly, her emerald eyes steady. "Inquiries can be double-edged, Father." "What did she say?" He hesitated, buttering his toast. "Only that you seemed distant. Composed but distant. And Voss, well, the man's been asking after you through mutual friends. Persistent, that one." A flicker crossed her face, quickly quelled. Persistent. It was obsession masked as regret. 6 months ago, Alexander had courted her with fervor. Bouquets of hothouse roses, rides in his private carriage through Central Park, promises of a life unbound by society's gaze. His family, old Knickerbocker stock, traced roots to Dutch traders, their steel empire a monument to ruthless ambition. Yet he had shattered it all with that letter, discovered in his desk during a visit to his study. Words like daggers. "Dearest Clara, Our arrangement in Chicago proceeds apace. Olivia remains a charming diversion, but you are my future. She pushed the memory down, like a stone into deep water. Let him ask. I have no answers for him. The day progressed in its ordered cadence. After breakfast, Olivia attended to correspondence in the parlour, a room of velvet settees and gilt-framed portraits of stern ancestors. Her younger sister Abigail, 18 and bubbling with debutante dreams, fluttered in, her skirts rustling like autumn leaves. Abigail's gown was a confection of pale pink taffeta, bows at the shoulders, her golden curls bouncing free. Olivia, you must come to the sewing circle this afternoon. Mrs. Rockefeller's daughter will be there, and they're gossiping about that scandal with the opera singer. You know, the one linked to Voss. Olivia's pen paused mid-stroke. Gossip is a thief, Abby. It steals time better spent elsewhere. But Abigail persisted, her blue eyes wide. Oh, but it's everywhere. They say Voss ended it abruptly, that he's pining now, and after you snubbed him at the ball? The whole room buzzed. Even Caroline Schermerhorn called you icily magnificent. A soft knock interrupted. Jenkins entered with a silver tray, bearing a single envelope, sealed with black wax imprinted with a railroad crest. Olivia's heart stuttered, but her hand remained steady as she broke the seal. Inside, elegant script. Olivia, one conversation, for old time's sake. Meet me at the park tomorrow, noon, AV. She crumpled it, the paper whispering like dry leaves. Elias, entering behind the butler, caught the motion. From him. Olivia nodded, flames of old hurt licking at her calm. He won't accept silence. Her father sighed, rubbing his temples. The Voss family dines with the Astors next week. Tensions could ripple. Our mills supply their uniforms. Business and pleasure tangle easily. Abigail gasped. Do you think he'll cause a scene, like that time with the coal barons? Enough, Olivia said firmly, though her voice carried a thread of unease. She rose, smoothing her gown, and moved to the window overlooking Fifth Avenue. Carriages clattered by, horses' hooves echoing on cobblestones, while newsboys hawked papers shouting of stock fluctuations. This was her world, polished surfaces hiding undercurrents of ambition and betrayal. Hierarchies ruled, the old money like the Astors dictating invitations, the new titans like Voss buying their way in with lavish donations to museums and operas. Women navigated it all with fans and faint smiles, their power in whispers and alliances. As afternoon teas beckoned, Olivia donned her walking dress, a tailored affair of navy wool with a bustle that swayed just so, kid gloves shielding her hands. She stepped out, the crisp autumn air nipping at her cheeks, accompanied by Jenkins at a discreet distance. The sewing circle at Mrs. Lennox's townhouse promised polite chatter on embroidery and charity balls, but Olivia sensed the undercurrent. Eyes would watch her, probing for cracks in her facade. There, amid the clink of teacups and the scent of Darjeeling, Mrs. Astor held court, her silver hair coiled like a crown. Miss Harrington, she drawled, peering over her spectacles, your composure last night was admirable. Though I hear Voss is unsettled. Olivia met her gaze, offering a measured smile. Unsettled waters make for poor sailing, madam. Laughter rippled, light and forced. But as the group dispersed, a young matron leaned close, voice low. Be careful. Word is, Voss has been inquiring at your father's clubs. Something about a debt from that Chicago trip, unsettling indeed. Olivia's pulse quickened. A debt or another ploy? She excused herself early, the envelope's weight lingering in her mind like a shadow. Back home, as twilight fell and gas lamps ignited along the avenue, she stood alone in the library, fingering a locket from their courtship days. Simple gold, empty now of the portrait it once held. Then a sharp rap at the front door. Jenkins ushered in a messenger boy, breathless and dirt-streaked. For Miss Harrington, urgent, from Mr. Voss's offices. The note was terse. The matter presses. Come tonight, or the whispers become roars. Trust me, this concerns us both. Her blood ran cold. What game was he playing now? The chill she wielded as a weapon suddenly felt fragile against the storm he threatened to unleash. The gas lamps along Fifth Avenue cast long, wavering shadows as Olivia stepped into the cool evening air, her heart pounding like a distant locomotive. The messenger boy's urgent plea echoed in her mind, but she had sent him away with a curt dismissal. No, she would not scurry to Alexander's beck and call like some errant schoolgirl, yet the note burned in her reticule, its words a veiled threat that twisted her resolve. Whispers becoming roars. What hold did he imagine he had over her now? Back in the Harrington mansion, the library's fire crackled softly, its warmth doing little to chase the chill settling in her bones. Olivia paced the Persian rug, her walking boots muffled against the thick wool. The room with its towering oak shelves lined in leather-bound volumes, Dickens, Austen, treatises on commerce, had always been her sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a cage. Elias found her there, his face etched with worry under the lamplight. "Olivia, what troubles you? That boy—" "A summons from Voss," she interrupted, pulling the note free and handing it over. Her voice held steady, but her fingers trembled slightly. "He claims urgency, something about whispers and us both." Elias scanned the paper, his bushy brows knitting together. At 58, he had weathered market crashes and labor strikes, but personal scandals cut deeper. This could be bluff, or worse. Our textile contracts with his railroads, they've been shaky since his Chicago absence. If he's stirring debts... He trailed off, sinking into a wingback chair. "We can't ignore it, daughter. The Astors dine with us tomorrow. One wrong word, and invitations dry up like summer grass." Olivia stopped pacing, her emerald eyes flashing. Refusal tempted her. Let the roars come. Let society chew on the remnants of their broken courtship. But the cost loomed large. Abigail's debut season ruined, the family's mills vulnerable to Voss's whims. He controlled the iron veins that shipped their silks westward. A single pulled lever, and Harrington fortunes could unravel. "I'll go," she said finally, the words tasting like ash, "but on my terms, alone." Elias protested, his voice rising. "Absolutely not. Propriety chained me once," she snapped, then softened, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Father, trust me, this ends tonight." As midnight approached, Olivia slipped out the side entrance, cloaked in a simple woolen cape over her evening dress. The family carriage waited in the mews, Jenkins at the reins, his face impassive as carved stone. "To the Voss residence, miss?" he asked, though his tone carried doubt. "No, the park. He mentioned tomorrow, but I'll force his hand now." The carriage rattled over cobblestones, the city's pulse throbbing, drunken laughter from taverns, the clip-clop of late-night hacks. Central Park loomed dark and wild, its paths lit by sporadic lanterns that danced like will-o'-the-wisps. Olivia alighted near the Bethesda fountain, the angel statue looming above like a silent guardian. Mist rose from the lake, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. She waited, her breath visible in the chill, every rustle of branches setting her nerves alight. Footsteps crunched on gravel, deliberate, unhurried. Alexander emerged from the gloom, his greatcoat billowing like a shadow. At 32, he cut an imposing figure, broad shoulders straining the fabric, his steel-grey eyes piercing the night. No hat, his dark hair tousled by the wind. "You came," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. But his voice held no triumph, only a raw edge, like a man teetering on a ledge. "Did I have a choice?" Olivia retorted, her chin lifting. The air between them crackled, thick with unspoken accusations. "Your note reeks of coercion, Alexander. What matter concerns us both? Another diversion you tire of?" He stepped closer, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and smoke. "It's no game, Olivia, not this time." From his pocket, he drew a folded document, yellowed paper sealed with red wax. "This, a promissory note, signed by your father last spring, for $50,000, funneled through my Chicago offices to cover a bad shipment of cotton. Tariffs hit hard, mills like his nearly folded." Her blood froze. 50,000, a fortune that could topple empires. Elias had mentioned strains, but never this. "Lies," she whispered, snatching the paper. The script was his father's, the elder Voss, stern and unyielding. But there, Elias's signature, shaky but authentic. How? Why hide it from me? Alexander's jaw clenched, shadows playing across his face. "I covered it, silently, pulled strings with bankers, delayed collections. But Chicago changed things. My engagements there soured deals. Now creditors circle. If this leaks, slander in the papers. Harrington's painted as debtors. The Astors will shun you. Your sister's future gone. And you—" His eyes bored into hers, desperation flickering. "I did it for us, to prove my commitment before I proposed properly." Olivia's mind reeled. Commitment? After the letter to Clara, the opera whispers? This revelation shattered her fragile peace, thrusting her into a web of debts and deceptions. The status quo, her careful detachment, crumbled. Allies blurred. Was Alexander savior or saboteur? Elias, her rock, now frail with secrets, and antagonists? The creditors, the gossip mills, perhaps even Voss's own family, hungry for leverage. "I won't be your pawn," she said, voice breaking the silence like ice cracking. But hesitation gripped her. Refuse him, and the family drowned in scandal. Accept aid, and she danced back into his orbit, bound by obligation. The social cost pressed tomorrow's dinner, eyes watching for weakness. Etiquette demanded grace under fire. No public airing, only veiled negotiations. Vigilance would be her new shadow. One misstep, and the elite's knives sharpened. Alexander extended a hand, gloved in fine leather. "Let me help. One alliance, Olivia. Marry me, and the debt vanishes. Our families unite. Harrington silks on Voss rails, unbreakable." The proposal hung, a forced choice altering everything. Marriage to the man who broke her, or watch her world burn. As the fountain's water trickled mockingly behind them, Olivia stepped back, the document clutched like a curse. "This changes nothing between us," she lied, her voice a whisper. But deep down, she knew the rupture was complete. Dawn would bring decisions that could exile her from the life she knew, or chain her to the magnate whose madness she had ignited. Yet as Alexander's eyes pleaded in the lantern light, a deeper fear stirred. What if his aid came with strings she couldn't sever? The night deepened, and with it, the first true fracture in her fortress of cold. The carriage jolted to a halt outside the Astor residence on Fifth Avenue, its wrought iron gates gleaming under the midday sun. Olivia descended with measured grace, her navy walking dress hugging her frame, the bustle swaying like a pendulum of resolve. Kid gloves encased her hands, and a modest bonnet shaded her emerald eyes from the prying gaze of passers-by. It had been 2 days since the park confrontation, the promissory note tucked away in her vanity drawer like a venomous secret. Elias had urged caution, but the dinner invitation from the Astors demanded attendance. Refusal would signal weakness, appearance, a calculated defiance. Inside, the drawing room buzzed with the low hum of elite conversation, scented with hothouse orchids and fresh beeswax polish. Crystal vases overflowed with blooms, mirrors reflecting the opulence back in infinite layers. Mrs. Astor presided from a velvet chaise, her gown of burgundy brocade a testament to old money's unassailable poise. At 60, she wielded influence like a scepter, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Miss Harrington, how gracious of you to join us," she said, her voice a silken drawl as Olivia curtsied. "Do sit. Tea is pouring." Olivia settled onto a brocaded settee, accepting a delicate cup from a liveried footman. The group numbered a dozen. Matrons in feathered hats, their daughters in pastel silks, all orbiting the queen of society. Whispers rippled, subtle at first like wind through silk. Caroline Schermerhorn, perched nearby, in a gown of emerald taffeta with jet beads at the collar, leaned toward her companion, Mrs. Lennox, but her words carried just far enough. One hears the Harringtons navigate turbulent waters. Debts from Chicago, they say. Voss's shadow looms large. Olivia's grip tightened on her saucer, the porcelain warm against her palm. She sipped her tea, Earl Grey, laced with lemon, keeping her expression serene. Class frictions simmered here, invisible lines drawn between old knickerbockers like the Astors and newer fortunes like the Harringtons, built on trade rather than inheritance. Her family's mills, respectable yet mercantile, placed them a rung below. Humiliation lurked in every sidelong glance, every paused sentence. The door opened with a soft click, admitting Alexander. He entered unannounced, his broad frame filling the threshold, attired in a charcoal frock coat that accentuated his powerful build. At 32, he moved with the assurance of a man who bent the world to his will, yet his steel-grey eyes sought her immediately, lingering a beat too long. Murmurs swelled. Mrs. Astor arched a brow. "Mr. Voss, an unexpected pleasure. Do join us." He bowed slightly, claiming a chair across from Olivia, close enough for their knees to nearly brush under the low table. "I wouldn't miss the chance to pay respects," he replied, his voice deep and controlled, though a muscle ticked in his jaw. The room watched, testing the air between them, rejection or reconciliation. Olivia met his gaze coolly, no warmth thawing her frost. Yet in that shared silence, a micro-gesture passed. His fingers drummed once on the armrest, a subtle echo of the rhythm they once shared during stolen piano duets in his conservatory. Conversation flowed to safer shores, charity galas, the latest opera at the Academy, but undercurrents pulled. Mrs. Lennox, a widow of 50 with rouged cheeks and a lace fichu, turned to Olivia. "And you, my dear? How do you find the season? Such entanglements must weigh heavy." Her tone dripped false sympathy, eyes flicking to Alexander. Olivia set her cup down with deliberate calm. "Entanglements are for sailors, madam. I prefer solid ground." A ripple of polite laughter followed, but Caroline's fan snapped open, shielding a smirk. Subtle barbs continued. Queries about Elias's health veiling jabs at business strains, compliments on Olivia's gown, masking envy laced with pity. The friction built, class divides sharpening. Voss, with his steel empire, elevated yet tainted by scandal. Harrington's, steady, but vulnerable. Then the symbolic brooch appeared. As footman cleared the tea service, Alexander's hand brushed hers in passing a plate, a fleeting touch, electric and unintended. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch, placing it before her on the table. "A token," he murmured, low enough for only her ears. Inside gleamed a gold brooch shaped like a railroad spike intertwined with a silk thread, his emblem merged with her family's trade. For strength in trials. The room stilled, eyes darting. Mrs. Astor leaned forward, intrigued. Olivia hesitated, the metal cool against her fingers as she lifted it. It initiated something, an emotional arc stirring beneath her chill, not forgiveness, but a reluctant acknowledgement of shared stakes. She pinned it to her bodice, the gesture minimal, yet it drew a small advance. His eyes softened, holding hers in a prolonged silence that spoke of burdens unspoken. No words, just the weight of what they might rebuild. But shadows stirred. Unseen in the alcove, a figure watched, Elias's rival in textiles, Mr. Harlan Crowe, a gaunt man of 45 with a hawkish nose and vested ambitions. He had allied quietly with Voss's creditors, his own mills hungry for Harrington contracts. A nod to his footman and a whispered instruction, probe deeper, antagonist in the wings, plotting sabotage. As the gathering dispersed, Caroline approached Olivia at the door, her voice honeyed venom. "Such a bold gift, Miss Harrington. The papers will adore this tale." Laughter trailed her, light but cutting. Olivia stepped into the sunlight, the brooch a warm weight against her chest. Acceptance flickered amid rejection. The elite's gaze measured her rise or fall. Back in the carriage, she traced its edges, the touch evoking a shared silence that chipped at her walls. But as the wheels turned toward home, a newsboy's cry pierced the air. "Extra! Voss Harrington whispers heat up society." Visible consequence landed, a society column note already circulating. The test in semi-public forum passed, but at what cost? Alexander's minimal defense had shielded her subtly, yet Crowe's shadow lengthened, promising deeper frictions ahead. The brooch, once a symbol of alliance, now felt like a chain, pulling her toward an uncertain waltz, with the Magnate whose madness deepened with every thaw in her ice. The rain came down in sheets as Olivia's carriage rattled northward along the post road, the wheels churning mud into a relentless slurry. It had been 3 days since the Astor tea, the brooch still pinned to her bodice like a talisman she couldn't quite discard. Elias had insisted on this trip, a visit to their upstate mills to inspect the autumn shipments, away from the city's prying eyes. "Clear your head, daughter," he'd said, his voice thick with unspoken fears. But solitude shattered when Alexander appeared at the stables that morning, his horse saddled and ready. "I'll escort you," he declared, brooking no argument. Propriety demanded a chaperone, yet Jenkins had fallen ill, leaving them bound by necessity and the storm's fury. Thunder cracked overhead, jolting the carriage. Olivia gripped the leather strap, her emerald eyes fixed on the blurred landscape, rolling hills giving way to dense woods, the Hudson River a grey smear in the distance. Her travelling dress, a practical grey wool with a modest collar and layered skirts, clung damply from an earlier downpour. Alexander rode alongside until a bolt of lightning spooked his mount, sending it bolting into the trees. "Wait!" he shouted, but the wind swallowed his words. Minutes later, he reappeared on foot, soaked to the bone, hauling himself aboard with a grunt. The door slammed shut, sealing them in the dim, swaying confines. Water dripped from his greatcoat, pooling on the floorboards. He shook his head, dark hair plastered to his forehead, revealing lines of exhaustion etched deeper than before. At 32, the magnate's frame, broad and unyielding, suddenly seemed vulnerable, stripped of its usual armor. "The horse threw a shoe," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. "We'll share until the next post." Olivia shifted to the far bench, her skirts rustling in the tight space. The air thickened with the scent of wet wool and unspoken tension. Rain hammered the roof like accusatory fingers. The world outside reduced to a watery veil. No escape, no polite distance, just the two of them, rocking in rhythm with the storm. Silence stretched, broken only by the creak of wood and distant thunder. Alexander peeled off his coat, hanging it on a hook, his shirt clinging to muscled shoulders. He caught her glance and looked away, rubbing his hands for warmth. "This weather reminds me of that night in Saratoga," he said finally, voice low. "The races. You laughed when the skies opened and we dashed for cover under that old oak." She remembered. A stolen afternoon 2 summers past, before the fractures. Her laughter had been genuine then, free. Now it felt like a lifetime away. "Rain washes away illusions," she replied coolly, though her pulse quickened. The brooch pressed against her chest, a reminder of fragile truces. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, studying the floor. The confinement forced proximity, their knees brushed with each rut in the road. "Olivia, I never meant for this. The debt, The letter to Clara. It was a desperate play. My father demanded an alliance with her family to secure the Chicago lines. Duty, not desire. His words hung heavy, peeling back layers. Guilt shadowed his steel-grey eyes, humanizing the Titan. I mourned us every night in that god-forsaken city, paced hotel rooms, staring at the rails I built, wondering if I'd forged my own cage. She turned to the window, fogging the glass with her breath. Wounded pasts surfaced, unbidden. Her mother's death, leaving her to navigate Elias's expectations alone. The locket she'd emptied of his portrait, a small act of severance. "And I cried rivers for a man who chose empires over hearts," she whispered. "You left me adrift, Alexander, composed on the outside, shattered within." The carriage lurched, throwing her against him. His arms steadied her instinctively, warm and firm through damp fabric. Time paused, no pull away. Just a shared breath, the storm raging outside, mirroring the one within. He didn't release her immediately, his touch a gesture of quiet promise. Trust rebuilding, brick by tentative brick. "I see your strength now," he murmured. "It's what drew me then and terrifies me still. Let me prove it. No debts, no schemes, just us." Her resolve softened. The chill thawing in that intimate press. Not passion, but a deeper confidence stirring. Humanity glimpsed in his confession, her own vulnerabilities aired like laundry in the wind. The anchor came unbidden. From her reticule, she drew an inherited locket, her mother's, its silver chain cool in her palm. "She wore this through father's worst strikes," Olivia said, opening it to reveal a faded miniature of her parents, young and hopeful. Duty bound them, but love freed them. "What binds you, Alexander?" "Truly." He took it gently, fingers brushing hers, eyes tracing the image. "Guilt, mostly, for chasing shadows when light was here." He handed it back, his gaze holding hers, a tacit vow, changing the air from frost to fragile warmth. Trust flickered, unconsummated, but real. The storm eased as they neared the inn at Croton, but a rider approached through the mist, mud-splattered and urgent. He reined in, handing Alexander a sealed missive. "From Mr. Crow, sir, for Miss Harrington's eyes." Alexander's face darkened. Harlan Crow, his rival's envoy, no doubt. Olivia broke the seal, her heart sinking. The note was curt. "Debts called due, mills inspected tomorrow. Choose alliances wisely, or Harrington threads unravel." Crow's sign of movement, espionage in the shadows, a message to sow doubt just as intimacy bloomed. She folded it away, the emotional tide receding like the rain. Alexander's hand hovered, offering silent support, but the warmth faded. "He won't win," he said fiercely. Yet as the carriage pulled into the inn's yard, lamplight spilling golden on wet stone, Olivia wondered. The gesture had bridged them, but Crow's shadow loomed, threatening to drown the fragile spark in colder waters. What a rival waited at the mills, a trap, or another test of the trust they'd barely forged. The inn at Croton stood weathered against the fading storm. Its clappered siding slick with rain, lanterns swinging like pendants in the wind. Olivia stepped down from the carriage, her grey wool dress heavy with damp, the brooch at her collar catching the last grey light. Alexander followed, his presence a solid shadow behind her, but the note from Crow burned in her pocket like a coal. They had shared a fragile bridge in that rocking confines, confessions traded like secrets in the rain, but now reality clawed back. The mills waited upriver, a day's ride away, where Elias's fortunes hung on looms and ledgers. Inside, the common room hummed with travellers, farmers nursing ale, a peddler haggling over tobacco. The innkeeper, a ruddy-faced woman with arms like knotted ropes, showed them to separate chambers upstairs. "Storm's passin', miss," she said, handing over a key, "but roads'll be mud come mornin'." Olivia nodded, retreating to her room, the wooden stairs creaking underfoot. She barred the door, leaning against it as exhaustion pulled at her. The locket from her mother lay on the washstand, its silver glinting mockingly. Trust, with Alexander's hand still echoing on her arm, and Crow's words slithering in, unravel the threads. Sleep came fitful, broken by the howl of wind through eaves. Dawn broke misty, the Hudson veiled in fog as they set out again. Alexander on a fresh horse from the stables, Olivia in the repaired carriage with a hired driver. The road wound through birch groves, leaves plastered to the ground like fallen soldiers. Conversation stayed sparse, the intimacy of the storm boxed away. "We'll reach the mills by noon," he said at one stop, handing her a flask of water. His eyes searched hers, seeking that thaw, but she turned away. The notes threat a wall between them. The mills rose on the river's bend, a sprawl of brick buildings belching steam, water wheels churning with relentless grind. Workers in caps and aprons milled about, their faces smudged with dye. Elias waited at the gate, his vested suit rumpled, mustache drooping like wilted fern. "Olivia! And Mr. Voss!" Surprise sharpened his tone, but he shook Alexander's hand firmly. Didn't expect company. Tours commenced under the midday sun, the air thick with the tang of wet wool and lanolin. Looms clattered in vast halls, shuttles flying like arrows, women at the frames, their hands blurring in rhythm. Olivia walked the aisles, nodding to foremen, her presence a steadying force. Elias explained the shipments, silks bound for Chicago, cottons from the south strained by tariffs. "Production's up 10%, he boasted, gesturing to ledgers. Alexander listened intently, his broad frame dwarfing the narrow paths, offering nods of approval that eased the knot in her chest. For a moment, Alliance flickered, his knowledge of rails promising smoother transport, her family's threads weaving into his steel web. A small success, shared glances amid the din, his hand brushing hers as they reviewed a bolt of indigo fabric. Hope sparked, tentative, but shadows lengthened. As they emerged into the yard for lunch, a carriage arrived, black lacquer, drawn by matched bays. Harlan Crowe alighted, gaunt and sharp-featured, his frock coat impeccable despite the mud. At 45, he carried the air of a predator, eyes like slate under a tall hat. Flanked by two clerks, each clutching satchels, he approached with a predatory smile. "Elias Harrington. A word, if you please." His voice sliced the air, drawing workers' stares. Elias paled but squared his shoulders. "Crowe, this is a working site." "Precisely." Crowe snapped open a document, yellowed and official, stamped with a notary's seal. "Promissory note due immediately. $50,000 plus interest accrued. Your Chicago venture soured, Harrington. Tariffs ate your cotton. My mills supplied the shortfall. Payment or seizure." Gasps rippled through the yard. Olivia's stomach twisted. The same debt Alexander had revealed, now weaponized. Elias stammered. "Extensions were discussed." "Discussed, not granted." Crowe's gaze slid to her, then Alexander, triumph glinting. "And whispers of alliances. Voss here playing knight, charming but irrelevant. The courts agree. Liens filed this morning in New York. Your looms, your warehouses, mine by week's end, if unpaid." Alexander stepped forward, jaw set like granite. "This is blackmail, Crowe. The debt's tied to my lines." "Your lines?" Crowe laughed, cold and barking. "You covered it once, Voss, but creditors demand blood now. Opera scandals, Chicago fiascos. Your name drags this down too." He turned to the gathering crowd, voice rising for all to hear. "Harringtons, beholden to debtors and dahlias. Who'd ship with such risk?" The attack landed frontal, public as a town crier's shout. Workers murmured, foremen shifting uneasily, loyalty fracturing under the weight of scandal. Elias clutched his chest, face ashen, while Olivia felt the ground tilt. Reputation wounded, headlines would scream it tomorrow, society pages feasting on the fall. Her family's project, the mills, the silks, teetered, alliances crumbling like dry earth. Support vanished. Even the driver averted his eyes. She whirled on Alexander. "You said you'd handle this." Trust shattered, the bridge from the carriage splintering. His face twisted, guilt, fury. But words failed him as Crow pressed the assault, clerks unfurling more papers, threats of legal auctions, whispers of Elias's desperate gambles leaked to the press. The moment sealed it. No return. Olivia grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him toward the office. "We fight this," but isolation closed in. Workers dispersed, whispers trailing like smoke. Alexander reached for her, but she recoiled, the brooch suddenly heavy as lead. "Your help brought this wolf to our door." Emotional severance cut deep, the equilibrium ruptured. Crow watched, satisfied, his sabotage blooming into a public wound. As the sun dipped, Elias slumped at his desk, head in hands. "It's over, Olivia. The banks will call everything." She paced, mind racing, status plummeting, her composure cracking under the isolation. Alexander lingered outside, a silhouette against the river, but she barred the door. No more shared silences, only the echo of betrayal. Night fell heavy, lanterns flickering in the mill yard. A messenger arrived at dawn's edge, bearing Crow's ultimatum: sign over a mill stake by noon or face the courts. Alexander knocked softly, voice muffled through the wood. "Let me in. We face this together." But Olivia turned away, tears pricking for the first time since the ball, not for him, but for the world slipping through her fingers. The withdrawal came, emotional exile, her fortress rebuilt higher, colder, yet deep down the ultimatum loomed: ally with the Magnate, or watch it all burn alone. The river rushed on, indifferent, as the point of no return swallowed them whole. Dawn broke over the Hudson like a reluctant witness, its pale light filtering through the mill office's grimy windows. Olivia stood at the desk, her grey wool dress rumpled from a sleepless night, the brooch at her collar now a mocking emblem. Elias snored fitfully in a corner chair, his face gaunt under the lantern's dying glow. The ultimatum from Crow lay open: surrender a mill stake by noon, or courts would seize it all. Isolation clawed at her, workers' whispers had spread like ink in water, loyalty fraying. Alexander's knocks had ceased hours ago, his silhouette vanished into the fog-shrouded riverbank. Trust, that fragile bridge from the carriage, lay in ruins. She rifled through Elias's desk drawers, desperation sharpening her focus. Ledgers tumbled out, columns of figures in his precise hand, tracking tariffs and shipments. One caught her eye. A slim, leather-bound volume, its spine cracked from use. A diary, not of sentiments, but secrets. Elias's script filled the pages, dated last spring. Voss interceded. One entry read: Chicago shipment lost to floods and duties. 50,000 owed, but he covered it. No papers, no trace. For Olivia's sake, or his own gain? Her breath hitched. Further in, Crow sniffing about. Offered to buy the debt cheap, twisted against us. Refused, but if Voss pulls back... Manipulation unfolded like a dark tapestry. Crow hadn't just discovered the debt. He'd schemed to acquire it, using Voss's Chicago fiasco as leverage. The letter to Clara, a ploy to force Elias's hand, binding Harrington's to Voss through obligation. Alexander's coldness wasn't indifference, it was duty's heavy yoke, guilt for dragging her family into his empire's shadows. She clutched the diary, emerald eyes blazing. No more victim. Agency surged, hot and unyielding. By mid-morning, with Elias stirring groggily, Olivia penned a letter in the office's alcove, her quill scratching like claws on wood. To the New York Herald, she began, words flowing fierce and clear. She detailed the debt's origins, not recklessness, but tariff's cruel bite on honest trade. No names at first, but hints: a rival's greed, a magnate's silent aid. Let truth pierce the veil, she wrote. Harrington Mills stand not on borrowed time, but woven strength. Sealing it with wax, she summoned a rider from the yard, a loyal foreman, his apron still dusted with lint. Deliver this to the city, swiftly. Elias gaped as she explained, the diary open between them. Crow's the viper, she said, voice steady. He bought the note from under Voss, twisted it for sabotage. Your entries prove it. Testimony in ink. Her father's eyes widened, colour returning. And Alexander. He shielded us, not ensnared. Relief mixed with shame. I misjudged him, Olivia. Duty bound him, as it does us all. Hope peaked first, a small advance. Alexander returned as the rider departed, mud-caked boots tracking across the threshold. He carried a satchel, heavy with documents. From my Chicago offices, he said, spreading them on the desk. Letters from bankers, a portrait miniature of his father, stern, unyielding, tucked in an envelope. The elder Voss orchestrated the cover-up, demanded I court alliances to secure rails. Clara was bait. You, the prize I couldn't claim without risk. His steel-grey eyes met hers, raw with confession. Guilt reframed him, not the cold betrayer, but a man torn by legacy's chains. I stayed silent to protect you. Failed, but tried. Olivia traced the portrait's edge, the miniature's lines echoing his own. Trust stirred, contained and quiet, no rush of passion but a deepening accord. She handed him the diary. We share this burden now. His fingers brushed hers, lingering a beat. The touch, a vow of partnership. Together they pored over proofs, bank drafts showing Crow's purchase of the note at discount, a testimony from a Chicago clerk, sworn, notarized, detailing the rivals' bribes to creditors. The web unraveled. Publish it all, Alexander urged. With your letter we expose him. She nodded, the moment electric with possibility. Elias rose, clapping Alexander's shoulder. Allies, then, for the Mills! A peak of hope swelled, the couple aligned, barriers crumbling into common ground. Olivia's initiative shifted perceptions already. Word of her letter raced ahead on horseback, whispers in the yard turning to nods of respect. Workers gathered outside, sensing the tide, but valleys plunged deep. Noon struck like a hammer. Crow's carriage thundered into the yard, the man himself alighting with clerks in tow, faces smug as vultures. He waved a sheaf of papers, voice booming for the crowd. Harrington, time's up! Sign or lose it all! Workers murmured, tension coiling. Olivia stepped out, chin high, the diary and letters clutched like weapons. Not today, Mr. Crow. He sneered, hawkish nose flaring. Bold words from a debtor's daughter. Voss's scraps won't save you. But as she held up the proofs, reading aloud the clerk's testimony, exposing his bribes, the crowd gasped. You bought the debt to bury us, she declared, voice carrying like a clarion. Greed, not justice. Alexander flanked her, adding drafts to the pile. Your schemes end here. Indignation ignited, workers jeered, a foreman shouting, Thief! Crow's face twisted purple with rage. He lunged for the papers, but Alexander blocked him, broad frame, unyielding. Touch them and face assault charges. The rival retreated, spitting venom. This isn't over. Courts will laugh at your parlor tricks. His response loomed greater, threats of lawsuits, smears in rival sheets. Yet the advance held. Social perception tilted, Olivia no longer the fragile heiress, but a force unveiling corruption. As Crow stormed off, dust swirling, Elias embraced her. You've changed the board, daughter. Alexander's gaze held hers, trust solidifying. Deeper than before, a quiet reapproximation born of shared fire. But the valley deepened. A messenger arrived, breathless. From the Astors, miss. Urgent summons. The opera gala tomorrow night. Mrs. Astor insists on your presence. All of society attends. Crow will be there. Olivia's pulse raced. The decisive public event beckoned, a stage for confrontation where whispers could roar into reckoning. With Alexander at her side, they prepared, but Crow's parting glare promised retaliation sharper than any blade. The gala loomed, a glittering trap or triumph as the magnate's madness intertwined with her rising resolve. The Academy of Music's grand auditorium shimmered under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, their gas flames dancing like captive stars. Velvet seats creaked as New York's elite settled in for the evening's Puccini aria, the air thick with perfume, cigar smoke, and the rustle of silk gowns. Olivia Harrington glided through the throng, her gown a cascade of midnight sapphire taffeta, its fitted bodice laced with seed pearls that caught the light like distant constellations. At 24, she moved with the poise of one reborn. Ebony curls swept into an elegant updo, emerald eyes steady, no trace of the chill that once armored her heart. Alexander Voss walked at her side, his tuxedo coat tailored sharp across broad shoulders, steel-grey gaze fixed ahead, though his hand hovered near her elbow. A silent claim, a shared resolve. The summons from Mrs. Astor had been no mere invitation, it was a battlefield. Whispers from the mills had raced to the city, her letter to the Herald, igniting society columns with hints of intrigue. Crow would strike here, in this gilded Colosseum, where reputations rose or fell on a single aria. Elias and Abigail waited in their box, her sister in pale lavender chiffon, fanning herself nervously. "He'll come for blood," Elias murmured as Olivia took her seat, the orchestra tuning below like a gathering storm. The overture swelled, violins weaving tension, but eyes darted to the royal box. Harlan Crow entered late, gaunt frame slicing through the crowd, his evening suit ill-fitting on his hawkish build. At 45, he exuded false grandeur, flanked by a sycophantic lawyer and a bought witness, a disgraced clerk from Chicago, greased with promises. He claimed a seat 2 rows below, his slate eyes locking on Olivia with predatory glee. The dossier burned in his pocket. Forged ledgers twisting the debt into fraud, a fake letter in Elias's hand confessing embezzlement, the witness primed to testify mid-intermission. As the soprano's voice soared in Act 1, a page boy slipped through the aisles, delivering notes like daggers. Olivia's arrived first, Crow's seal, bold and mocking. "Your truths unravel tonight." The clerk speaks, Harrington's fall. Her pulse quickened, but she passed it to Alexander without a flinch. He crushed it in his fist, leaning close amid the applause. "He underestimates us," he whispered, breath warm against her ear. The air between them hummed, not with old passion, but a forged alliance, trust tempered in the mill's fire. Intermission arrived like a thunderclap. The auditorium emptied into the foyer, a whirl of ostrich feathers and monocles, champagne flutes clinking under vaulted ceilings painted with cherubs. Mrs. Astor held court near the marble staircase, her burgundy gown a throne of brocade, Caroline Schermerhorn at her side. "Miss Harrington," the dowager intoned, lorgnette raised, "your letter stirs the pot, debts and rivals, such drama for La Bohème." Before Olivia could reply, Crow struck. He mounted the staircase, voice booming over the murmur. "Ladies and gentlemen, a word before the tragedy unfolds on stage." Heads turned, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. He unfurled the dossier, papers fluttering like black wings. "The Harrington debt is no tariff tale. It's fraud. See here, forged shipments, siphoned funds." He thrust the fake letter high. Elias's signature scrawled in mimicry. The witness stepped forward, a weaselly man with sweat-beaded brow. "I clerked for Voss in Chicago. Harrington took bribes. Thousands vanished into pockets." Gasps rippled. Caroline's fans snapped shut. Matrons clutched pearls. Elias rose from the box shadows, face ashen, but Olivia surged to her feet, skirts whispering defiance. Alexander flanked her, a wall of resolve. This was the sabotage's apex, public evisceration, reputations shredded before the elite's unblinking eyes. Crow smirked, eyes gleaming. "What say you, Miss Harrington? Will you drag your name through courts like your silks through mud?" The foyer hushed, a sea of faces, Astors, Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, watching the moral crux, flee and exile, fight and redefine. Olivia stepped forward, chin high, drawing the diary from her reticule, its leather worn like a shield. "Lies woven finer than any thread, Mr. Crow, but truth cuts deeper." She opened it, voice clear and commanding, echoing off marble. "My father's words. You bought the debt at discount, twisted it for gain. No fraud, your greed." The crowd leaned in. Alexander produced the satchel from the mill, spilling proofs onto a side table, genuine bank drafts, the Chicago clerk's sworn testimony, now their witness, bought back with Voss steel contracts. "This man," Alexander declared, pointing to Crow's pawn, who quailed under scrutiny, "was paid by Crow to lie. See the receipts, $500, hush money." The real clerk, a stout Irishman summoned from the wings, nodded vigorously. "Aye, sir, I saw the bribes myself, Crow's hand in every shadow." Murmurs swelled to outrage. Mrs. Astor lowered her lorgnette, lips pursing. Caroline gasped. "The audacity!" Olivia pressed on, her initiative a social strategy honed sharp. "We choose honesty over empire. Harrington's build, not break. Voss aids, not ensnares." She met Alexander's eyes, a glance heavy with choice, defining them as equals, not debtors and saviors. The community shifted. Whispers turned to nods, the humiliated heiress reframed as lioness, her composure a crown. Crow faltered, papers slipping from his grasp. "Fabrications, the courts—" But the lawyer slunk back, abandoning him. Workers from the mills, invited as guests, shouted from the rear, "Thief! Saboteur!" Jeers erupted, a wave crashing. Mrs. Astor rose, voice slicing clean. "Enough! Mr. Crow, your presence offends. Leave or face the 400 scorn." Ushers escorted him out, gaunt form shrinking amid catcalls. Public humiliation, his empire's veins severed by truth's blade. Euphoria bloomed, electric and cathartic. Applause thundered, not for the opera, but for justice unveiled. Elias beamed, tears glinting. Abigail hugged her fiercely. The elite encircled them, handshakes, congratulations, repositioning Harrington's among the stars. Olivia turned to Alexander, the din fading to a shared silence. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining in tacit commitment, a promise unspoken. Together, beyond debts, in quiet strength. If this victory stirs your heart, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss another tale of triumph from the Gilded Age. As the curtain rose anew, the auditorium's glow seemed brighter, but in their box a hush settled, post-storm calm, laced with what-ifs. Alexander squeezed her hand once more. "We've won the night," he murmured. "But the dawn—" Olivia smiled faintly. The chill fully thawed, yet Crow's parting glare lingered in memory, a shadow hinting at deeper vendettas. What reckoning awaited beyond the applause? The morning after the opera dawned crisp and golden over Fifth Avenue, sunlight piercing the lace curtains of the Harrington mansion like arrows of renewal. Olivia stood at the parlor window, her simple morning gown of cream muslin draping softly over her frame, the sapphire taffeta from the night before folded away like a shed skin. At 24, the weight of battles won settled on her not as burden, but as wings. The Herald's extra edition lay on the side table, headlines screaming triumph. Harrington heiress exposes textile tyrant, Crow's empire crumbles. Her letter, bolstered by the proofs, had ignited a firestorm. Society columns hailed her as the voice of integrity, the 400's new darling. Elias entered, his steps lighter than in months, vested suit pressed crisp, moustache groomed with unaccustomed care. At 58, the ordeal had carved lines deeper into his face, but his eyes shone with pride. The banks called it first light, Olivia. Debts forgiven, Voss's influence, they say, and Crow's liens dissolved like mist. He embraced her, the scent of his pipe tobacco warm and familiar. You've saved us, more than Mills. Our name stands tall now. She returned the hug, her emerald eyes misting briefly. Transformation etched her, no longer the composed ice queen, but a leader with compassion's fire. We saved it, Father, together. Abigail burst in behind him, her lavender dress from the gala rumpled, golden curls tousled from excited pacing. At 18, her debutante dreams bloomed anew, invitations pouring in, suitors lining up. The Asters sent flowers, and Caroline Schermerhorn, she called you society's sentinel. No more whispers, only admiration. The door-knocker echoed sharp and insistent. Jenkins ushered in Alexander, his broad frame filling the threshold, a leather case in hand. No greatcoat today, just a tailored frock coat that hugged his powerful build, steel-grey eyes locking on hers with quiet intensity. At 32, the Magnate's aura had softened, guilt's shadows lifted, replaced by resolve. "May I?" he asked Elias, who nodded with a gruff smile. In the sunlit parlour, amid velvet settees and ancestral portraits, they gathered. Alexander opened the case, revealing crisp documents, court orders, notarized and sealed. "Crow's sanctioned," he said, voice steady as iron rails. "The judge, swayed by your proofs and the herald, ruled fraud on his part. His mills seized for bribes, assets auctioned to pay creditors. Exile awaits, he'll flee to Europe, stripped of rights here. No more shadows." The antagonist's fall was concrete, his hawkish ambitions crushed under justice's wheel. Workers from the mills, now co-owners through a Harrington fund Olivia proposed, cheered in the streets. Loyalty rewarded, neutral rivals like the Rockefellers repositioned as allies, offering joint ventures. Elias clasped Alexander's hand. "You turned the tide, son. No debts between families now, clean slate." Abigail beamed, slipping out to fetch tea, her future secured by the reframed alliances. The room hummed with closure, legal threads tied, familial bonds mended without resentment's stain. Olivia led Alexander to the library, the space once her cage, now a haven of light. Gas lamps unlit, morning rays danced on oak shelves, illuminating the locket from her mother, now refilled with a fresh miniature, not of loss, but of them. A sketched portrait, simple and true, captured by a society artist at Dawn's request. "No old chains," she said softly, holding it up. The chain gleamed, unburdened. From his pocket he drew a ring, platinum band with a single emerald cut fresh from Virginia mines. No heirloom's ghosts. "By choice," he murmured, slipping it onto her finger. Their hands met, fingers lacing, a ritual pure as spring water. No grand vows yet, but the seal was set. Alliance between equals, love, chosen freely, thawing the coldness that had driven him mad. She looked up, voice warm with leadership's grace. "We've built more than empires, Alexander. Compassion in the mills, schools for workers' children, funded by our silks and your rails." He nodded, pulling her close. Their lips met in a kiss born of love, not desperation, soft, lingering, the world fading to their shared breath. Outside, the avenue bustled, carriages rolling toward new horizons, the Harrington legacy in motion. A library wing at the Astor Institute, dedicated to honest trade, its cornerstone laid that afternoon. Abigail peeked in, giggling. "The carriage waits for the laying. Father says hurry." Elias joined, arm linked with hers, the family whole. As they stepped out, the sun crested high, casting long shadows that promised futures unbound. Alexander's hand in Olivia's, they boarded the open landau, the city unfolding like a tapestry rewoven. Workers waved from sidewalks, children in fresh-purchased gowns cheering the procession. Legacy lived, compassion's quiet revolution, triumph's enduring light. Yet, as the carriage turned toward the Institute, a lone envelope waited on the mansion steps, sealed with unfamiliar wax, postmarked from Boston. Alexander spotted it first, brow furrowing slightly. Another shadow? Olivia squeezed his hand, smile unwavering. Or just the wind? We've faced worse. The soft hook lingered, a whisper of continuations. But for now, the new equilibrium held, strong, radiant, eternal. 8 years had woven their quiet magic over the bustling veins of New York, transforming the raw edges of triumph into a tapestry of enduring grace. The Harrington Voss mansion on Fifth Avenue stood taller now, its facade expanded with a wing of sunlit galleries, where silk mills and steel rails converged in murals painted by rising artists. Gas lamps had given way to the soft glow of electric fixtures in the grand homes. But here, in the heart of their legacy, Olivia Voss, once Harrington, preferred the familiar flicker of candles on family evenings. At 32, she moved through life with the same emerald-eyed poise that had thawed a magnate's madness, her figure softened by motherhood, ebony curls now laced with silver threads she wore like badges of wisdom. The parlor hummed with laughter that afternoon, sunlight slanting through tall windows onto Persian rugs worn by small feet. Olivia sat on a velvet settee, her gown of deep emerald velvet, simple yet elegant with lace at the high collar, cradling their youngest, little Elias, named for her father, who at 3 tugged at her pearl brooch with chubby fists. "Mama, tell the story again," he demanded, his steel-grey eyes, so like Alexander's, wide with wonder. Beside him, their daughter, Abigail Grace, 7 and fierce, bounced a porcelain doll, her golden curls mirroring her aunt's. "The one with the bad man and the mills," Olivia smiled, drawing them close, the scent of fresh-baked gingerbread wafting from the kitchen. "Very well, but only the brave parts." Her voice, rich and steady, painted the tale, the opera's confrontation, truths unveiled like dawn breaking shadows. The children leaned in, rapt, as if the Gilded Age scandals were fairy tales of old. Upstairs, their eldest, William Alexander, 10 and already sketching railroad designs on scrap paper, called down for more ink. The family had grown roots deep. 3 children, each a blend of Harrington resilience and Voss ambition, their home a haven where love had not just resisted time, but flourished like ivy on iron. Alexander entered from the garden, his broad frame still commanding at 40, though lines of laughter etched his face where worry once ruled. His frock coat, dusted with autumn leaves, hung open, revealing a simple gold watch chain, a gift from their wedding day, unadorned and true. He scooped up Elias with effortless strength, planting a kiss on Olivia's forehead as he settled beside her. "Rehearsing history again," he teased, his rumble warm, eyes locking on hers with that familiar spark. No madness now, only the quiet madness of joy. Their love had deepened through trials, shared boardroom battles, midnight whispers over ledgers, the tender chaos of raising heirs. What began in cold resolve had bloomed into partnership unbreakable, each glance a reminder of the fortress they'd built together. Elias Harrington, her father, shuffled in from the library, leaning on a cane carved from Hudson oak. At 66, age had slowed him, but his mustache still twitched with pride, his eyes bright behind spectacles. The mills thrived under joint stewardship, Harrington silks now adorning Voss rail cars bound for the west, workers' schools dotting the riverbanks, funded by their charitable trust. Grandchildren demanding tales, "You're spoiling them, daughter." He chuckled, settling into his armchair, a blanket over his knees. Abigail, the younger sister, now 26 and wed to a gentle scholar, visited often. Her own infant in arms, the family web spun wider yet tighter. Nostalgia tugged at Olivia as she watched them. This new equilibrium, hard won from debts and deceptions. Society had shifted too. The Astor's reign softened, new voices like hers championing women's roles in commerce, her essays in ladies' journals inspiring quiet revolutions. The opera house, rebuilt after a fire, bore a plaque, in honor of truth and alliance, gifted by O. and A. Voss. Crow's shadow lingered only in footnotes. Exiled to a dingy flat in Paris, his fortune evaporated in lawsuits, his name synonymous with ruin. He had paid dearly, whispers said, alone, embittered, a cautionary ghost haunting debtors' tales. No mercy for the viper who struck at hearts. As evening fell, the family gathered at the long oak table, silver gleaming under chandelier light. Alexander raised his glass, crystal etched with intertwined threads and rails, to 8 years of light after the storm. Olivia met his toast, her hand finding his under the cloth, fingers lacing as they had in that fateful foyer. The children chattered, Elias the elder reciting mill facts with boyish zeal, while little Elias clapped for plum pudding. Laughter echoed warm as hearth fire, chasing away old chills. Later, in their bedchamber, with children tucked away and Elias dozing by the fire, Olivia and Alexander stood at the window, overlooking the avenue alive with carriages and electric trams. Moonlight silvered the leaves, the city a glittering promise. "Do you ever miss the cold?" he murmured, arm around her waist. She turned, tracing his jaw, the lines she knew by heart. "Only as the forge that made us." Their kiss was slow, nostalgic, carrying the weight of paths not taken, the tears she no longer shed, the madness that led to this. Love had endured, not as fragile flame, but enduring blaze. In the quiet, with the house settling around them, Olivia whispered of futures, a transcontinental line for women's education, Silks funding scholarships. Alexander nodded, pulling her close. The Gilded Age had gilded their scars into gold, and in this home, legacy breathed, vibrant, eternal, a symphony of second chances. As stars wheeled overhead, they dreamed on, hearts synced like perfect rails stretching into tomorrow. As the echoes of that 8-year legacy faded into the quiet rhythm of their lives, Olivia Voss reflected on the path that had led her from frozen resolve to this sun-warmed hearth. The Gilded Age, with its glittering facades and hidden thorns, had tested her like a forged-temper steel, turning a young woman's quiet grief into unyielding strength. She no longer cried for the man who once shattered her world. Instead, she had become the architect of her own dawn, proving that coldness wielded wisely could melt even the hardest heart. What lessons linger in this tale of railroads and resilient threads? First, that betrayal's sting fades not in vengeance, but in truth's unyielding light. Olivia's journey reminds us that silence can be a shield, yet speaking out, with courage and clarity, topples empires built on lies. Harlan Crow's downfall was no accident. It was the inevitable crash of greed against integrity. In a world where fortunes rose on whispers and alliances shifted like sand, she showed that real power lies in authenticity, in choosing partners not out of obligation, but from the depths of a healed soul. Second, love, reborn from ashes, burns brighter if tended with patience. Alexander's madness was born of his own chains, duty's heavy yoke and the fear of vulnerability, but Olivia's composure forced him to confront it. Their union, sealed by choice rather than debt, teaches that true partnership thrives on equality, where vulnerability strengthens rather than weakens. 8 years on, with children laughing in their halls and mills humming with shared prosperity, they embodied that truth. Forgiveness doesn't erase scars, but it weaves them into something beautiful, enduring. And finally, in the grand theatre of society, one voice can rewrite the script. Olivia's stand at the opera, her letters to the press, her quiet revolutions in workers' lives, these weren't grand gestures for glory, but acts of quiet defiance that rippled outward. They remind us that even in eras of rigid hierarchies, compassion and agency can dismantle walls, creating spaces where families flourish and futures unfold without the shadow of old wounds. If this story of thawed hearts and triumphant silks has stirred something in you, the thrill of justice, the warmth of second chances, share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment gripped you most? The opera's confrontation, the carriage confessions, or the family's joyful epilogue? To let me know you journeyed all the way to this heartfelt close, drop the word "Thaw" in your reply. It'll be our secret signal that you've embraced the full tale and helped spread these stories to fellow dreamers. For more narratives from the Gilded Age, where romance battles ambition and heroes rise from heartbreak, check the cards above or the playlist on screen. Your engagement keeps these tales alive. Likes, shares, and subscriptions fuel the next adventure. Until then, remember, in life's grand ballroom, hold your chin high, speak your truth, and let love lead the dance. Thank you for joining Olivia and Alexander's whirlwind. May their legacy inspire your own.